Why does an 11-year-old call a local skate shop, try to negotiate a deal to like skate for free because his parents wouldn't pay for it? But that laid the foundation of take a shot, right? And then I began to do that throughout my life on a lot of different arenas, and I began to win less than I would lose, and it just reinforced keep taking the shots, and they just kept getting bigger and bigger and more refined as I got older and older.
Hello, I am Taylor Justice.
I'm Esther Farkas.
And welcome to What Unites Us. Today we have a very special guest, Mr. Rob Dyrdek. I want to say, outside of being a cultural icon, you influenced a good portion of my life. When I first saw Meaty, I realized I needed a bulldog. And so my first bulldog dude, may he rest in peace, was from your show.
Yeah. Look, I appreciate that. I appreciate that. I'm glad you got a bulldog and not a mini horse.
Yeah, that's right.
You know, because a lot of people went.
It was a toss-up,
thinking they were pets.
It was a toss-up.
He is from Kentucky, so that could have happened.
Originally
That
from
could have fully happened.
So that's right.
And I am super excited to finally meet you. I heard a ton about you. Brandon, my husband's an investor in Super Jacket, your amazing, successful production company. I brought my Super Jacket hat, but Taylor won't let me wear it. He says it's not becoming of an executive at a company. So I just show you, I'm a big fan, super excited to talk to you, hear a little bit about what you're doing now, about entrepreneurship, about enduring businesses, and just pick your brain for a little bit.
Yeah, no, I'm excited, and you know, me and your husband are kindred spirits.
Yeah.
Like it was he's your husband. I would refer to your husband as a bulldog, and like me and him would just have to butt heads in so much of our deal making, and the funniest thing that in the middle of the chaos, it turns out that this guy has a Soma dome, just like I have a Soma dome. I'm like, you have a Soma dome? It was like this most incredible bonding moment to find out that
Rob,
both of us get
Rob,
into a Soma dome.
I have also heard this. Can you explain for those that might not know what a Soma dome is, what it is?
So a Soma dome is essentially a meditation pod, right? So you get in it and it's light and sound waves, and you can either do just regular music and light, or you can do a guided meditation. I'm pretty sure Brandon doesn't use it like me. I get in it every single day, and I listen to primarily the guided manifestation meditation, and I just try to feel myself in the future and what future outcomes I want to try to manifest is like how I use it as a tool every single day, and it just sits, now it just sits in my office.
Nice. So I went to West Point, and we had a center there called the Center for Enhanced Performance. And so it wasn't a Soma dome, but we had this egg chair, and it was around the same thing. It wasn't necessarily about purely manifestations, but it was around visualizing success and how do you regulate your body in extreme chaotic situations. But they had this chair, and they could pump in a bunch of loud music. So I played football at school, and they would pump in loud music and then give me plays, and then have me like repeat back like what was I supposed to be doing. And they took that to like U.S. Army Special Forces and a bunch of different areas. But totally a big believer both in the manifestations, but also positive affirmations as well.
Yeah. Now, do you think it worked? Do you think you were more prepared for the
1,000%.
Chaos? Yeah, it's super
1,000%.
interesting. Yeah. Yeah, because I like the idea. Look, listen to me. It is not the same. Okay, they're preparing you for chaos and getting you a calm mind in chaos. I'm just trying to live a harmonious, happy life. You know what I mean? Like, so although they might both be eggs.
It works in both. It works in both. It's something I still leverage. Not necessarily the egg chair itself, but the visualizing of success and trying to make sure that if I'm walking into a situation, it isn't my first time being there.
Yeah.
So
one thing I would say too, not to get stuck on it, but what I like to do is like like think of the outcomes that I want and then go through the feelings and emotions that I would have when they actually happen.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to trick my body, trick the quantum field, if you will, into this being a future reality, trying to pull myself towards it is essentially what I'm attempting to do when I'm not drifting away thinking about random stuff.
And when did you find that? The ability
Well,
to start thinking.
I felt like I was being pulled to meditation for years, and um, but it didn't make sense to me. It was very difficult for me to be still and sit on, like a rug and some pillows and like just let the world feel through me. I just could never get there. And I actually started talking to a doctor friend of mine about meditation, and she brought up the Soma Dome. She's like, "Oh, I'm doing research with this company right now that has this thing called the Soma Dome. You should come and try it." They had it at her office, and I went and tried it and was like, "Okay, this is how I need to meditate," And I track all the milestones in my life on an ongoing basis. And if you tied together my qualitative data that I track of my overall happiness, my net worth, my time management, like my entire overall quality of life, all of it could come back to an inflection point that starts in January of 2018 when I started meditating on a daily basis.
Wow. Thinking of the art, the science, the magic of your new venture. Let's take it back a little bit to younger Rob. And so being 16 years old, left school, given kind of your own journey of becoming an entrepreneur, being a public icon, and now putting a lot of process and intention behind building businesses and taking your life forward, how do you think that translates to your children? Do you think you want your children to follow a similar path?
You okay with them dropping out of school at 16? What if they came to you and they're like, "Dad, I'm done here. You good?"
Yeah, I mean, look, my 6-year-old said, "I got an idea for a company. It's pizza with honey." And I'm like, "Son, that's how you got to think. Pizza's a huge market. You're a unique position by putting honey on it." I'm like, "What do you want to call it?" He's like, "Delish Honey." And I went and bought delishhoney.com. I'm like, "Son, that's a really good name." So look, I think a lot about this because, it's much different when you're trying to raise and shape and develop kids, right? And when you think about your own path, and what an extraordinary life I've had through this sort of new opportunities present itself. How can you maximize those opportunities and take chances and take on new challenges in completely different worlds that then led to this incredible, very big life, But when I think about the fundamentals of that, right, it at the core of it, it's self-belief.
Yep.
Right. The only reason I was able to keep taking shots in these different arenas because I believed that I could find success there and was willing to take the risk to get there. And fun, and more than anything, I just never stopped growing. I didn't get educated, but I never stopped growing and evolving and expanding into life. For me, to kids, like, hey, you have to know that you can do anything that you want in this life, but you've got to create a path towards achieving it. And you don't just check boxes and goals. You evolve and expand towards goals. You grow into goals. So fundamentally, my focus is life is amazing.
Yep.
And the greatest gift in life is being able to learn. And like, he learned how to fix the toilet. I'm like, you see that? Think how incredible that is, and learned how to put his seatbelt on. I'm like, you see that? That's learning. That's growing and evolving, and I just want that. I want my children to think life's incredible. Yeah. And part of life's greatest gift is you get to continually learn on an ongoing basis. And then I try to instill in them that like, I love working. I love my job. Everything I do is so exciting. I love it. And school is amazing. You get to hang out with your friends. You get to learn. You get to
Yeah.
vote. Because I grew up in the paradigm, as I'm sure you did, is it's like you got to just get through school so that you can get to the real world. Then you can be an adult, get your real job, like, and
Yeah.
then you have that job because now you're working for retirement so you can hang out with your friends on the weekend.
Yeah.
Rather than the idea of how do you live in a perpetual state of joy in the
Right.
present, right,
Well,
is
there was like this thing
really
that
the
we
goal.
were told coming through West Point. It was kind of like this thing, and even in the military, it's like this delayed gratification. Oh, I'm going to do all these things now, so then eventually I can do X, Y, or Z. And so I think for the point that you just made there around learning, there's the learning component, but also you're a very creative person. Ever since you were a kid, designing shoes, creating content on MTV, continuing to create businesses, now create content that teach and motivate others of kind of living their best life. On the creativity side, can you walk through a little bit of like what is your process? Is it something that's just it's already instinctual in you, and I think you probably already had that bug, but how do you then put a process to creativity?
For me, the most creative things to me are like puzzles. And it's like, man, you get to like, continually shape and evolve this idea until the puzzles begin to fit together,
Yeah.
and then it begins to come alive, right? And for me, I think really like well-defined processes and creativity lends you to have more free mind share, to think more creatively, to think more multidimensionally and more dynamically, to make something better or more creative in the first
Yeah.
place, right? I think there's always been this idea of like, oh, you can't have structure or else that dampens creativity,
Yeah.
where I've always looked at like great structure gives creativity the ability to thrive.
I think a big piece of it too for you, as I kind of thought through everything that you've done, is risk taking. And so I have a theory, stay with me, but you're a phenomenal athlete, right? Growing up and in a sport, that requires a lot of risk taking. So you took that physical risk and I think transferred it to a lot of decision making on the business side, and we're able to, I think, take that mentality and take risks other people wouldn't have in your position. And did it have anything to do with sort of that physicality of doing a sport and being an athlete?
Well, I don't know like that if I would necessarily tie it to athletics, but athletics are the reason I am who I am today, right? And to me, fundamentally, I took risks at a young age, 10, 11, 12, where it's like, I was going to like play for like the like junior varsity soccer team when I was 12. I was going to like become a sponsored skater at 11. Like I took these things at an early age, and then I built confidence by them actually working
Mm-hmm.
for me. Like one of the biggest things I did at 11 is I called the local skate shop and was like, hey, they had a ramp in the back and I'd never skated a ramp. And I was like, if I get 10 people to enter your contest that's happening in like 2 weeks, will you let me skate for free on your ramp? And they were like, what? Like, just come down here. We'll let you skate if you want to skate.
Yeah.
Tried to negotiate, but they were like, come down. Then I skated the ramp, and then they're like, man, you're so good. Like for skating a ramp for the first time, you have so much potential. I didn't even know what the word meant. And then I became sponsored, and they let me skate there for free all the time, which began this journey of like, man, I'm going to be a professional skateboarder. But that one bit of risk, where does it come from? Why
Yeah.
does an 11-year-old call a local skate shop, try to negotiate a deal to like skate for free because his parents wouldn't pay for it? But that laid the foundation of take a shot.
Yeah.
Right. And then I began to do that throughout my life on a lot of different arenas. And I began to win less than I would lose and it just reinforced keep taking the shots, and they just kept getting bigger and bigger and more refined as I got older and older.
Well, I appreciate two things there. One, the fact that athletics had a big influence on your life, because I say that all the time with football. This one here makes fun of me for it and says football wasn't that big of a.
Well, he's
of a
got
push.
like football helmets behind his desk all the time. Everyone looks at him. They're just like, "You're a brute." And
It's like putting a skateboard behind your desk, Rob,
I-
right? I mean, come on, it's
but
fine.
it looks cool.
It's
That looks
fine.
cool.
That's my
But
I got a
think
helmet.
People have
Yeah.
like
He does have a
preconceived.
helmet.
Yeah, that's good. You have several helmets, but and like people have like preconceived ideas about certain sports, right? Like when you say football, you think a certain type of person. And
Well, I'm
think
sure
that's-
you've probably felt that too, right? Like skateboarding when you were coming up wasn't that big of a sector. You really made a name for yourself, and you created a culture around that. But let's talk about that a little bit, like preconceived notions of you.
Like think about the preconceived notion that I still manage today.
Yeah.
Forget about being sort of athlete, and now it's like, when you think about one of my most successful thing I've ever created is a show that's seen by millions, did 55 billion minutes viewed last year, the most watched thing on all of cable.
Right.
And it's like,
Wild.
me through like making
Flex.
fun of clips. Now, you wouldn't think that if you were to meet me, you would have no idea the depth of like how not only do I operate my life, how I look at the world, and ultimately how I run my business. You would never in a million years. So most of the time when people have conversations with me, they're like, whoa, like what? Like I can't even, I thought like, especially podcast interviews when you don't really do much research and you kind of like think that like, the skater Rob from Rob and Big who does ridiculousness is like coming on like, and you're like, and then all of a sudden it gets into life strategy and art, science, and magic and design, automating, and optimizing your life. It's like, what?
Right. But that strikes me. That
it.
Strikes me as something you use to your advantage, though, because it goes back to skating and taking risks.
So do you.
Well, sure. But like talk a little bit about that, because again, you strike me as the type of person that when things are there doesn't seem like a clear path, you probably outperform because you see those situations as opportunities. And when someone is maybe misjudging you, you then have the ability to over deliver on who they think Rob is.
Not at all, right? Like I'm not driven by it. It pays me. I think it's more cute than anything, right? So it's like, I don't like, again, what do we experience, we're cooking through time.
Mm-hmm.
For me, I'd like to live to 112. I want to be a super centurion. You experience mind through your mind in the present experience, and so for me, it's like life is this extraordinary adventure, and part of the fun for me is having conversations with different people that have different expectations, but there's no advantage to be gained. At the end of the day, I would ultimately rather just have a really smart conversation that's prudent to the vision or the thing I'm trying to accomplish with someone that already understands me, and we're collectively trying to push something forward together, right? So I don't mind it. I think it's fun. And again, I think, the same way that I never even I launched the machine in 2016, did a little bit of press of like, here's the way I think. And then it was like, all right, you need to go build for the next like 4 or 5 years and evolve your sort of philosophy and what you want to create. Then you can come back out and start talking about it. So it's like the same way that now when you hear me talk and look at my track record, it's like, oh, like it makes perfect sense, not really knowing I just put my head down and built all of this for 7 years before I decided to come out and talk about it again. And it was underlined by continuing to, do television shows and still all this high profile stuff while I was building my transition. The same way that I ultimately know, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, it'll be kind of funny that I was like a ridiculousness guy and Robin Big and a skater based off of what I hope to achieve in the next decade.
Yeah. I mean, look, you're a master brand and image builder, and I think that's sort of been true for the entirety of your career. I'm just curious, how has that changed from when you were getting started to what it's like today? It's very different, right, today than it was to build a brand.
Yeah, and look, I think, it started at the core of when you quit high school at 16 and telling your parents you got to treat yourself as a business and which was like before anything 1990 when
Hmm.
that didn't even exist,
Right.
and you're tracking your finances, and keep in mind I made like $1,200 the year
Hmm.
that I quit high school. I always sort of looked at myself as a business as opposed to a brand,
Hmm.
Yeah.
and then as opportunities and platforms evolved,
Hmm.
I really, I wrote the idea of Rob and Big for a skate video as a joke
Mm-hmm.
of like, I'm going to bring a security guard to talk to security guards that are trying to kick me out of skating. Like, it was a joke that was then discovered by Jeff Tremaine, who was like, man, you guys should try to do a TV show together, right? Then I had to learn. Now I had this entirely new platform,
Yeah.
and then when I saw how I could monetize this platform and build a brand through that, then I like wrote Fantasy Factory, because I'm like, okay, then I'm just going to create a show that's just my own platform, that is just about building brands and using it and evolving it. And I just think I'm not reinventing myself like Madonna, but it's as I evolve, I want to continue to build depth in
Yeah.
the content and the stuff that I create that mirrors the more authentic version of myself that I've evolved into. And I think that's really what I've done time over time. And the beauty of it is along the way, I got much more clear on what type of person I wanted to be and what type of life that I wanted, that
Mm-hmm.
then slowed everything down to
Hmm.
where I wasn't just chasing financial success.
Yeah.
I was trying to create a harmonious, high quality life. And that's really when I began to find like true success. And then now as I evolve, it's like, wow, I'd rather share this with people because this is
Mm-hmm.
going to have a much larger impact.
You are a builder, but also continue to learn and continue to evolve. And I think we see that a lot too within our business. We've been
Hmm.
at this for a decade. It took 7 years before people really started to realize what we were doing. And we're in the software business. We build these software platforms. And I would say in our last 24 months, we've had our hyper growth success, and being able to build a multi-billion-dollar business from that. But it took 7+ years before anybody really gave a damn. And so when
Yeah.
you're thinking about other entrepreneurs or coaching them, there is this world of instant gratification, and I totally am in line with living a life of purpose and being happy and doing those things. But it's also tied to, you got to match that with work ethic and putting that plan in place and believing in it. Can you talk a little bit more, a little bit about, there you can teach certain aspects of entrepreneurship, but you mentioned even with your children, belief in self. How do you think you can train or gain confidence if maybe you have a little of that lacking as a default?
I mean, look, you have to understand, you grow belief,
Yeah.
right? You grow belief, you grow motivation, you grow all of these things.
Hmm.
And you don't grow them by continually making plans that you don't fulfill and coming up
Hmm.
with ideas that never work. Being patient is worthless unless it's patience with purpose.
Hmm.
If you're just constantly pivoting and chasing and now trying to tell another story and raise just a little bit more money, and you're in this absolute chaos, you're going to lose confidence, you're going to lose belief, you're going to try to like almost like Tony Robbins walking over fire motivate yourself, or no, this is going to be it this
That's
time,
right.
like, oh, you know
Hmm.
what I mean? And I think it's one of those things that's easy to say with experience and success, your experience in life will always boil down to mind share, right? Like, what are you thinking about, and you can live a balance, you can work out all the time, eat clean, but if your mind is like being pulled in a million directions and you can't, like, you're constantly like being drained from just thinking about everything, especially as an entrepreneur, of like what can break you. Those are the days you wake up and you're on the edge of quitting.
Yeah.
Right. And now you're fighting quitting, rather than the harmony that comes into knowing you're working the plan, you're evolving the plan, you've got to make changes along the way, but you're still headed in the right direction. You can feel yourself growing towards it. It's not as quick as it was possible. It's a lot harder, a lot more complex, but you still believe that you're making that progression towards it. Now you're building that belief. This is going to be the biggest thing I ever do, and a ton of things that have failed.
Yeah, give us an example. Tell us.
I mean,
I think people think everything you've done succeeded.
I've gotten into a couple luxury goods that I launched. I underestimated how incredibly difficult it would be to find consumers for a luxury product, and I fell in love with the margins. I'm like, look at these margins, man. You know what I mean? Like, the margins were just like, oh. Like, and this idea that you don't even need as nearly as many customers because you got this margin, this thing will be so profitable so quick. You have to understand that I didn't even know what venture capital was in 2012. I didn't even understand when they came to me and said you could raise money for your professional skateboarding league at that. Well, you could get $10 million at a 20 million pre. And I'm like, I don't even know. What do you mean? What's a pre? Like, I don't even like, what would that even mean? And how could it be worth $30 million? We did 7 million in revenue. Like, I had no concept of it, and to me, like to then go now to be like, to grow into, looking at like all aspects of the business. I did a split portfolio for a while where I just chased companies that I wanted to split dividends on, and then growth companies, because, Super Jacket was a really good example of like, man, a cake and eat it too. You just highly profitable until you sell it. And like, it's a much more, it's a beautiful thing to be creating liquid dollars along the way, rather than waiting for, a big payout one day, depending on the scale of the type of business, but certainly in these more dangerous sort of places. But the luxury businesses that I launched, and all the alcohol businesses that I dance with the devil in, like, just super problematic, like, we're talking negative margins, what I'm saying? Like, look, controlled distribution and negative margins. Like, you got to pay us to make no money, because if you can sell it, if you can convince enough people to buy this, then someone will buy you. It's a, like, even more backwards industry, you know what I mean?
So we have a quick question for you. So we have, obviously, we're entrepreneurs ourselves and building a company. We want to throw an idea by you. So
We've got ideas.
We are your son. We're gonna give you an idea. We obviously don't have time to do the 5-year plan real quick, but I just want like knee-jerk reaction.
Yes.
And so I'm on the road a lot, and I travel to all these different cities. And so Esther and I were talking about, I always see like the great chains, food chains that growing up, the Ponderosas, the Ryan Steakhouses, the Long John Silvers, the Kmart's. They're gone, right?
Only because me and you grew up so close in proximity, does that hit so hard?
You're Ohio, Kentucky guy. What if you took those great brands that we loved as kids, the nostalgia of them, and you turned it into like Ponderosa Bar? You kept it the same, but it's just like an entertainment bar type environment. Do the same thing for Long John Silver's or Kmart's.
Yeah. And you put them in. Yeah. This is the biggest thing.
Yeah, and you put them in the dilapidated shopping malls.
The old strip malls that are empty.
Old strip malls that are everywhere.
Like J.C. Penney would now be like a cool restaurant.
Hey, sounds like software minds trying to come up with like a retail product. Man,
So we got work to
man,
do.
sounds
Okay.
like it sounds like a couple software like entrepreneurs. Like, man, look,
stick
no,
to
this is what it
technology.
is. This is what it is. It's like, man, software is so hard. Like, LTV is impossible. Customer acquisition is like almost impossible. You want to know what would be easy to make money? Long John Silver's alcohol. Yeah. Like,
Nailed it.
So no.
All right, so we're
stick to text.
Looks like we've got a business partner.
Yeah.
Look,
Will you do it with us, Rob?
Yeah, look. I don't know anything about the space. I danced with the devil once and owned a restaurant. What I like to call a social investment.
Oh, totally.
But
The money sucked.
I am not privy enough on how profitable a Ponderosa bar could be.
We think it's probably negative margins.
Yeah, look. Listen to me. I just want you to listen to me. So I'm so excited as you start, right? As you start, and so as you start, like I'm in my mind, I'm trying to create the brand before you even tell it to me, and I'm like, oh man, it's some sort of like software that like ties all the.
We just threw
I'm like, it's some
curveball.
sort of. Yeah, I'm like, it's gonna be an app, and then I'm like, oh no, they're gonna go to frozen foods. It's gonna be like Long John Silver's and Ponderosa. I was thinking of like all the places where you could capture the heart and love of these nostalgic brands without actually going to physical spaces. And then you took me to the physical space and then put a bar in it. Like, man.
Genius.
Oh,
Okay, well, we'll go back.
Everyone's worried about Web 3. We're going like Web -1.
Yes,
We're going way back.
man.
We are.
Oh, wow, man. I
What if
appreciate
we had
that,
the same
man.
thing but Web 3.0? Like what if I said
look,
to you, like your avatar gets to
listen
go
to
to
me.
Long John Silver
I guarantee
again.
someone's
Yeah.
going to listen to this, and there's going to be a Ponderosa bar in the metaverse.
Yes.
Give me
Hey.
24 months. It's going to happen.
Look,
$4
look,
drinks.
Hey, I believe a Ponderosa in the metaverse has more potential than a Ponderosa, than a Ponderosa.
Gold.
As I say to everybody that pitches me a suspect idea, I caveat it with like, hey, I don't ever want to dream kill you. You know what I mean? Like, this is your dream. You got to chase
Anything
it.
is
And
possible.
I don't know. I only know what I know, and a lot of times what I know is wrong. So I disclaim that it may go and be the biggest thing of all time, but it didn't quite hit for me.
Well, Rob, thank you so much for coming on and having some laughs with us and sharing your philosophy. This has been a lot of fun and really appreciate your time. I know you're super busy, so usually we wrap up with a question, and Esther has this one for you.
Yeah, so we talk a lot about enduring business models, what makes a generational business, and so we just like to ask people, is it the brand or is it the people behind the brand? What is it that makes a business generational?
Well, I think it's a combination of both, but at the end of the day, it's how well the foundation of that brand is built, the core value of that brand, and how it extends into product, and how the range of that product is put inside a framework or railings that allows it to be made better and better and better over time, that same core value can be taken by other great, really smart people and innovated and optimized even further without changing what it stands for in the first place. And to me, that means that the strength of the brand design will always determine its ability to last forever. Because the right brand should be able to cycle out the right people over and over.
Well, thank you so much. So to wrap this up, a Ponderosa bar coming to a town near you
10
That's
years
it.
from now, you're
10
going to
years.
have us on your podcast, and we're going to be talking about how successful this business is and how you didn't believe in it when we first
No,
mentioned it to you.
no. We're going to be sitting in the metaverse,
That's in the
having a
metaverse.
conversation in the Ponderosa, having a virtual cocktail.
That's exactly it.
Yes, that's right. That's right. That's why you're the visionary and we're interviewing you. That's right.
That's right. That's right.
That's right.
Well, thank you, sir. We
Thank
appreciate
you,
your
guys.
time.
Thank you.
Appreciate you
This
guys.
was awesome.
Had a great time.